Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Sustainable Life channel. I'm Douglas Sabo, or at Green Living Doug, across social media. Welcome to the next episode of the Sustainability Spotlight, where we take a moment and spotlight different areas and developments in sustainable living. Now, for those of you familiar with the channel, we spend a lot of time, almost all our time, certainly talking about the topic of sustainable living and consumer behaviors, often talking about the supply side, what companies are innovating in areas around sustainable living at home, in the car, apparel, food, other types of topics. But equally important is the focus on what are consumers, the demand side, looking for. And so we do like to take moments to step back and really ask ourselves, where are consumers on this journey towards sustainable living and sustainable behavior and choices adoption? And what we're really excited about today is there is brand new research out, the 2023 Healthy and Sustainable Living Study, led by a wonderful research firm called GlobeScan. And we are honored today to have the Chief Executive Officer of GlobeScan, Chris Coulter, joining us. GlobeScan, to use your words, is a global insights and advisory consultancy working at the intersection of sustainable behavior change and trust. And I think what a wonderful and appropriate guest to have on. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on the Sustainable Life channel.
Oh, my pleasure, Doug. Great to be with you.
Good. Well, let's jump right into it. So tell our audience, you have this brand new research. It's been done for a few years, but give us a sense of what this is Healthy and Sustainable Living Study, what it looks at, where it's looking, what type of volume of countries, consumers, et cetera.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Doug. And so we've been doing global consumer research on sustainability for over 20 years. And we didn't do it terribly well for the first 15 or so, but the last 5 years we decided to create a consortium of organizations to help us crack this nut of the last mile, I think, in sustainability, of how do we engage, mobilize, encourage, empower people, 8 billion people, to live better and live differently when it comes to sustainability. So we created this study, Healthy and Sustainable Living, with a range of partners, the Akatu Institute of Brazil, IKEA, Visa, PepsiCo, P&G, Target, WWF, the Stern School in New York, and also Consumers International, all to try and help identify questions and inquiries and research to help us answer the question of how do we, again, mobilize and engage people to live more healthfully and sustainably. And so this is our 5th year. The survey took place in July and August. It was in 31 markets across the world and involved 30,000 interviews. It was an online survey and representative samples in countries, either mostly 1,000 people in each country and sometimes 500 in some smaller markets.
Yeah, it's great. So very timely research, just recently conducted. Results are fresh out. What does it say? What's generally the finding? Like, do consumers want to live more sustainable lives? And what does that even mean when we talk about sustainable lives? Like, what type of behaviors are we talking about when the study look at?
Yeah, so we've been tracking and trying to understand the desire of people's and their interest in living more sustainably. And we have identified that 49% of people across the world want to change their lifestyle a great deal when it comes to their environmental behaviors and footprints. And so half of us across the world feel that to a great extent. An additional 20 or 30% also want to make some changes. So we have most of us have a sense of wanting to shift our behavior when it comes to our footprint. However, only half of us take ongoing major actions when it comes to sustainable living. So we've got this big gap between aspirations and actions. And that's the opportunity, I think, for all of us to try and close that gap and live the way we want to live, which is important.
Well, certainly part of the research is not just what are the drivers, but also what are the barriers, and what is the research really seen as some of the key barriers for why consumers aren't adopting and transitioning to more sustainable behaviors in a more dramatic fashion?
Yeah, consumers identify a number of factors that are barriers to their ability to live more sustainably. One, at the top of the list, is the affordability of sustainable lifestyles. There's a strong sense among consumers that to live sustainably is costly and sometimes inaccessible for them. And that's an important thing for us to try and understand and democratize access to more sustainable living options and choices. People also view it as sometimes inconvenient and a bit challenging, but there's a whole set of other barriers that when you put together add up to something quite substantive, where consumers are looking for brands, governments, and NGOs to support them and facilitate their ability to live more sustainably. So there's this macro systemic piece of the puzzle, as well as the individual micro element that's related to cost and access and convenience.
I was looking at the some of the findings as well as the messaging around the findings, and I noticed the word that really stood out to me was the word stuck, and talking about maybe consumers are stuck in some ways. First, can you say what does that mean that consumers are stuck, and are there things that would be helpful that the research has found to unstick those consumers in this behavior change?
Yeah, and I think it's an appropriate word, because there has been this ongoing sense among consumers that they know intuitively that they've got to change their behaviors. They know that society has to change the way it operates to be much more sustainably. Yet they have limited access to knowledge, and they often feel stuck in not having the ability to afford some of the choices that are out there, or the knowledge and the empowerment. And this is where I think we do need a systemic solution, so we can all, if we're in business or government or civil society, create that soft infrastructure to allow people to live in certain ways.
I mean, and if you're if you're part of the audience and you happen to be at a company that might offer some of the behaviors or the products, the services that might actually help a consumer live more sustainably, there's a lot of talk about concerns about greenwashing, of you're saying too much about environmental benefits, or the opposite, green hushing. Is your finding, should companies continue to talk about sustainability, or should they actually stay silent when it comes to consumers and behavior changes?
There's a real strong demand among consumers to learn more what brands are doing and how they're helping consumers to live more sustainably. What are their approaches to sustainability? What are the products and services they offer, and the benefits of those products and services when it comes to the environment or wellness? So there's a huge demand for that, and an interest as well. Consumers find this innately interesting and differentiating. We have been tracking the whole threat of greenwashing concerns. And what's interesting is that among those, about half of us across the world do pick up messages around brands talking about sustainability, and over three-fourths of us continue to trust those messages. So there's been a slight decline in the percentage of people who trust sustainability messages that they're seeing in the marketplace, but it's quite robust, and it's not a systemic implosion. So I don't think we should default to green hushing. We need to keep the conversation going, the dialogue with consumers, and it's good for brands, and it's what consumers are looking for right now.
Well, I know the one of the main themes of this channel, the Sustainable Life channel, is we're not the doom and gloom channel. We're the hope and aspiration and inspiration channel. So looking at the research results, looking at what you're seeing around the world, particularly the 31 markets that were part of this study, is there anything that sticks out that gives you hope? I mean, certainly lots of challenges, but anything that gives you hope?
Lots of green shoots of hope. People are increasingly adopting behaviors related to plant-based and vegan-based products. So from a food perspective, plant-based foods, but also vegan-oriented materials. They're searching for that's clear and moving quite dramatically. Sustainable mobility is exciting to consumers, and you can see movement around adoption of behaviors related to that where they can. We can also see people in the global south, in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, are very engaged on sustainability, more so than the conventional wisdom suggests. So we have where the growth in the global population is, people there are feeling the impacts of sustainability and are much more optimistic about trying to jump into a sustainable economy. So there's lots of exciting pieces of the puzzle, but we also need to facilitate and encourage and support consumers in this transition to a different lifestyle.
Yeah, I think just one quick last question. And we're talking about consumers, and we're also, it may sound to our audience like we're talking about them monolithically, but we know consumers are on all different types of areas of the spectrum or the technology adoption life cycle or the sustainable behavior adoption life cycle. We've got those that are the innovators, the early adopters, early majority, to borrow the language of technology adoption. Where should, if our audience is from companies, from brands, where should they focus? That the greenest of the green, the other end of the spectrum, or somewhere in the middle?
I think it's the middle, Doug. So the greenest of the green tend to feel empowered enough to seek out the information they need, and they've got sort of strong perspectives already on the kind of products and services and brands they want to frequent. But the big mushy middle, the mainstream, is the group where there's an openness, there's an interest in sustainability, but they have not yet been engaged effectively. And I think if we look systemically across the world and what brands have done, there's not an overwhelming amount of information or branding going on sustainability still, after the decades into it. And we still have a long way to go to try and engage, attract, and empower that group, which represents 40 to 50% of the global population.
That's right. I think on this channel we've talked about plant-based, for example. You mentioned a moment ago, and we talked about, well, yes, 1% of the at least American consumers are vegan, 5% are vegetarian, but there's somewhere maybe about 60 to 70%, according to some research, that are the flexitarians. There's probably a lot of overlap between that flexitarian audience and the messy middle, if you will. I think, to borrow a term I think I've heard you use lovingly about that group of consumers.
Totally. And there's an increasing, as you're saying, there's an overlap between just the environmental side of this and the health side. And I think that's one of the opportunities we have going forward. Consumers don't break things into silos. They're looking for good things, interesting things, cool things, exciting things. And if you have something like plant-based food, which has an environmental benefit and a health benefit, wow, that's the opportunities we have to seize more frequently as brands.
Yeah, one thing that we've also highlighted is some of the other recent work that's come out that has tested some of that message from our good friends at the NYU Stern School, talking about what has really tested well with consumers is my health, my wealth, so financial well-being, and my world. And if we can use some of that messaging, some of that narrative, I think consumers resonate well with that in terms of sustainable living and sustainable behaviors.
Totally, absolutely.
Great. Well, for those who want to find out more, where can they find out more about the latest of this terrific multi-year research that GlobeScan's been doing? Yeah,
at globescan.com, where we have a litany of historic research that we try to share as much as we can on consumer insights. And our latest 2023 public report will be available next week. So please look out at globescan.com for that brief.
Great. Terrific. Chris Coulter, CEO of GlobeScan, thank you to you and the team for all the work, and thank you for joining us here today on the Sustainable Life channel. And
thanks for having me, Doug.
Listening to this, and absolutely, thank you, Chris. And if you're out there listening and you're interested in this content, feel free to like and subscribe to continue to get updates on more information. Head on over to globescan.com, as mentioned, where you can find out not only this research, but a lot of other great information. Again, I'm Douglas Sabo, or at Green Living Doug, across social media. Thank you for joining us on the Sustainability Spotlight on the Sustainable Life channel. Take care.